What's up? Welcome to another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It is so good to be back. It's the 8th day of July 2018. I'm your host, Doug Owen. You can go to my website, blacklistedradio.com. That is where you can find just about everything that you need to be part of this show, including the troll room, chat room, where myself, the ambassadors, the crew listening to the show will happily greet you. You can bring questions, comments, complaints, concerns. Sometimes we air those grievances and or questions on air. So it's one of the great ways to be part of the show in that matter. You can also go to blacklistradio.com. Click on over to Twitter. You can find the number to text us, 512-222-3067. It's all easily, readily, intuitively laid out for you at blacklistedраdio.com. So today, it's been 2 weeks since we did the show. We have celebrated the independence of this country, the 4th of July. That has come and gone. Some interesting takeaways from recent developments. I think we'll dive into the gutter. We'll talk gossip. We're definitely talking democratic socialism. We're talking anarchism and this newfound love of the left, the real left, the real McCoy, not the Democrats. The Democrats are just not radical enough, and there are a lot of people in the left that are starting to see through some of the bankruptedness of the DNC. So that has laid bare a lot of panic. The left is very vocally calling for revolution. You have Maxine Waters and some other gullible dupes that are, telling people to attack the President of the United States, attack cabinet members, attack the system, not the swamp, I guess. It would be the occupier, Donald Trump, and his family, and his wife. And it's kind of surreal. I mean, when you're seeing so many people break down on the left, people like Bill Maher discussing why it was a bad idea to disarm the left and how there's this second revolution coming. Now, calm down. Calm down. That's what the left always says, and the revolution is always necessary when there isn't a Democrat in the White House. With Barack Obama, things were just about the same. I mean, we could definitely talk about the GMO soybean tariffs and what that means for the U.S. trade war. This week, we officially engaged in the trade war. So a lot of things I want to talk about. Of course, I love hearing from you guys. So be part of it, 800-313-9443. You can talk to Ken, the producer of Blacklisted Radio, and so many other shows right here on RBN. You can talk to him, and he'll get you on the air. So, I hate to start here, but I found myself today, quite honestly, spending a good 30 or 40 minutes for the first time in a long time listening to Alex Jones, and only because he brought out, like I said, I'm in the gutter. He's responding to this response by Joe Rogan, and they've kind of been going back and forth about, let me back up here. So, Alex Jones, according to the mainstream media and just about everybody else that piles on Alex, are making fun of him for this prediction that July 4th would be the second civil war, that the left would instigate a confrontation with the right, and this would be the first throes of a new American revolution. And so people went to Twitter with, I forget the hashtag, but it was basically letters from the Second Revolution, and most of them harken back to Civil War talk, Civil War speak, joking about, not being able to charge their iPhones and, tell my kids I love them and all of this. And so Alex Jones, rightfully so, is pretty upset about, this, and I'll give him benefit of the doubt, this kind of misconstruing of what he said to further demonize him in the U.S. and global media, the mainstream media, trying to bring more of this, I think, mischaracterization of who he is and what he does. And one of the things that he mentioned, I guess, was that, Joey Diaz, another friend of his, a very famous comedian, was on the Joe Rogan show, which is undoubtedly the biggest podcast in the world today. And that when he went on his show, that iTunes had intentionally driven down and delisted his show. And he contends that this was a message to Joe Rogan that, you are not in control of this show and not in control of the people that you've had on it. So anyway, the, I guess, somewhat official alt-right, people like Ben Shapiro and others, have continued to try to do their best to distance themselves away from Alex Jones because of, the comments around Sandy Hook that he made or did not make. And really, I mean, because of the amount of disinformation that we have been lied into so many times before, weapons of mass destruction, I could go on and on, 9/11. And so the powers that be, the people that control Apple, the dissemination of information today in the new tech world have made no bones about attacking Alex Jones. And I think that, he's right to an extent, that he is the warning bell that when Alex Jones becomes censored, and it's hard to imagine that, considering that he has a global reach, hundreds, if not, 500 plus syndicated radio stations that are picking up his show. So, to say the least, he's not blacklisted. He is pretty prominent, pretty prevalent out there across the internet, and doing well for himself. But anyway, this notion that people like Joe Rogan are going to shy away from topics, that are giving into soft censorship, and ignoring really what the left is calling for, and that is a soft civil war. Now, we can talk about the last 18 plus months, and people have been psychologically damaged from the amount of, especially the left, people watching MSNBC, CNN. I mean, people that are following the mainstream media have been assaulted with a barrage of things that, just so much negative press surrounding the president, regardless of any achievement and or disappointments. I mean, obviously 90% of the M5M, the big five mainstream media outlets, you'd probably say there's three really big companies that control most of what mainstream media is today, at least television medium. And it's all been negative coverage. Like 80% of it, it's actually scientific. University did a study, I don't know, about 6 months ago, that showed how much of a bias of unfavorable news coverage. And of course, blaming all of the atrocities that have been committed in the United States, as far as creating and leaving a persistent problem with the immigration system that we have today. Now, there's plenty of distraction. Let me tell you. So, I mean, Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, I mean, it pales in comparison to the row between Liz Warren and Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump. Him calling her Pocahontas and saying that he would give her $1 million if she would take a DNA, one of those Ancestry.com, 23andMe type tests to see if she actually has any Native American heritage. And this became a huge talking point for days about whether or not this was sexist and racist and all of those things. And he talked about the Me Too generation. So he, kind of mocking them, saying that he had to be sensitive, which isn't quite mocking the Me Too movement. People directly, attacked and dealing with sexual harassment or worse, and coming out about it, which is, there's something to be said about a hashtag and that being a movement, what that really is, today. Oh, how I would have laughed if I could have heard myself 12 years ago saying, the hashtag movement, hashtag this, hashtag that. But anyway, nonetheless, that's kind of where we're at. So there's plenty of things in the gutter. There's, and of course, I bring it up because the media has done everything that they can to destroy Alex Jones, and he's somebody that has been able to weather the storm. And though I think that 80% of the stuff, all the video content from all of his other creators there is, it's better than B-roll. It's better than a lot of things, but not all that compelling in my estimation. But then again, watching the media obsess about these comments that are completely distractionary and don't paint a true picture of some of the foreign policy, some of the things that people should be really considering before them. So, put up an article today. I knew it was provocative because it's from AJ Plus, and hey, they have liberal voices. So we'll get to this and talk democratic socialism. Maybe you'd like to live under that. Some of the other, political philosophy, juxtaposing it to anarchy. But a great video. It's about 10 minutes long. How U.S. involvement in Central America led to a border crisis. And it is a chronological look from people reporting for ProPublica. So take it for what it is. Is there a leftist stint? Yes. But there have been almost 200 years of U.S. intervention that's led to this border crisis. The U.S., we could talk about Henry Kissinger and Cambodia, but, backing Pinochet in Chile and backing so many right-wing, I would call them communist governments. They weren't anti-communist. They weren't really democratic. The only difference was that they were letting, U.S. companies, Fortune 500s, extract their resources at their peoples, their constituents, to their demise at their expense, rather than the Russians. So, not to say that things wouldn't have turned out better and or worse if we hadn't played that role. But people get so caught up in the here and now and the situation at hand and have very little context of how we got here. And so you can, dismiss it as left-wing propaganda, but, very serious implications occur when you back one government over the other. We see that playing out in the Ukraine. We see that played out, and one of the reasons that Hillary Clinton, regardless of the Russians buying Facebook ads, which is what the Mueller probe has pretty much come down to, and just so much. This is why people are shell-shocked by the media, quite honestly. Okay, Donald Trump tweets this week that Mueller finds nothing, judge dismisses probe. Then you get a Newsweek article, and I actually looked at Newsmax and a couple other feed networks. Reuters, Washington Post, to get, you get the worst case, the right-wing stuff, Trump love stuff is going to gloss the details that, delve into the muck and mire, and, that's where the devil is. So I like to read what the Washington Post has to say about things. Why? Because they are the enemy. But not to say, but if they have a good point, because they hate everything that is happening under the Trump administration, they're going to have a good point. Just like if you want somebody that's hypercritical of U.S. foreign policy, look at RT. RT will tell you exactly. Now, are they a little bit tinted to the Ruskies? Well, of course they are. They're Russian state media. Voice America has some pretty good stuff on it, but it's complete, paid for U.S. propaganda. You can glean some information from it if you're smart enough to look through it. Most people, it's propaganda, Doug. Don't like it. Don't want to read that. Watch that 10-minute video that points to the U.S. backing, 50 some odd really bad people that made bad decisions for their people. And even as recently as 2008, Hillary Clinton helping the Hondurans and helping them along in their elections with their democracy in a suitcase. So anyway, yeah. George Soros and that's what the whole row between Alex Jones started over, that George Soros being a Nazi. And I didn't think it was that contested. I didn't think it was that shocking. I didn't think it was very, I mean, he's talked about it and talked about how those were interesting, exciting times in his life, and it is what it is. I don't think any differently of him. I didn't think much of him before. To know that he was a Nazi collaborator wouldn't change my opinion on his non-governmental organizations and what positive and very negative impact that they have, and their whole tent. Disarming people. Disarming them. So anyway, interesting and compelling. I saw this meme. Memeology is something that is real. It is worth talking about. It's pretty interesting because I think that the 2016 election was probably the very first meme-influenced election. These are things that weren't around in the George Bush era. But anyway, one of the memes that I saw today that was posted in the comment section alongside this article that you can find at blacklistednews.com, which is, again, how U.S. involvement in Central America led to a border crisis. And it says, time to do it like Ike. President Dwight Eisenhower removed 1.3 million illegal aliens in 3 months with only 750 federal agents. DHS has confirmed that illegal aliens cost more to keep in the USA than to deport them. Illegal aliens cost the U.S. $113 billion annually. Now, there's a lot to glean from this, and you'd have to really look into, the truth about this. But and it is true. I actually spent the time to do the research today, and yes, Dwight D. Eisenhower was able to round up 1.3 million illegal aliens in the United States of America, and I would say that 80 to 90% of the people in this country were either in complete support of it or had no idea that this was happening around them. Now, that in and of itself is pretty interesting. It shows how little, I think, people understood about common knowledge and the amount of distance people had from being politically aware than they do today in the 21st century with social media and all of it, including this podcast. We will take a break and be back on the other side with more. Your calls are welcome. It's Blacklisted Radio. All right, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. That's right. We'll get to anarchy. We'll get to democratic socialism and the new left, the unapologetic, enraged left that Alex Jones called this the summer of rage. Now, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, you know that I call every summer the summer of rage. There's always something that gets pulled to the mention of the folks out there. Something gets brought before them, and it becomes outrageous. This last several weeks, it has been a focus on the kids in cages and the DNA sampling of children against their will and parents, and oh my goodness, what this means. Now, I know that there's a lot of really interesting genetic information that companies would love to harvest from all of these people coming to the United States, demographics, and probably even more sinister. So what do? I don't know. How do you know that people are with their children? How do you know that those children aren't being extorted or sex slaves? I don't know. We wouldn't have nearly the problem that we have in South America if we didn't have the U.S. drug war. I know that. I know that there's a lot of obvious solutions that could eradicate most problems. And, I don't think it's a bad thing that the U.S. do everything it can to actually figure out, who belongs to who. But the only thing that's outrageous is that laws that have been on the books forever were being enforced through a policy under Donald Trump, a mandate, a zero tolerance policy, and prosecuting people that come to this country that do crime and expecting them somehow to pay for that. I mean, it's a problem. So apparently, according to this meme, it is a $113 billion problem with illegal immigration. So let's just say that it is. Now, I'll give you some anecdotals that'll probably irritate a lot of people. One of the great things about doing this show is that we do it late on Sunday night. It gets limited circulation. I only probably produce the show, once or twice a month, and being that we can get away with a lot more. we can really talk about just about anything. And there will be no recourse. We don't have to pay the piper. There's not lots of advertisers that can be bullied out of the show. It's one of the great things about the value for value model. If you value the show, support it in a myriad of ways, including financially. If you don't, then I'm surprised you're listening, but I appreciate you doing so. So anyway. So $113 billion goes back to illegal immigrants. And I think about, what that cost the United States, what it cost American taxpayers. And at the end of the day, we don't have a balanced budget. The debt ceiling continues to be extended. And most Americans have no idea who we are actually borrowing that money from. Now, people are selling treasuries to other countries. And you have the Chinese, the Japanese, that bought a lot, and other countries around the world that buy treasuries. But at the end of the day, it's the Federal Reserve. And paying back the Federal Reserve when you have no real way to ever do that doesn't seem like it's cause for concern. At least it hasn't been for 100 years for a lot of people, and I don't know why $113 billion moves the needle. But let's say that it does. Now, I live in Texas. I live in Austin, Texas, right outside in Round Rock. And there are plenty of illegal immigrants and or newly acquired Visa card holders, H-1Bs or H-1 visas, HB. Trying to think about it. Guest worker visas. There's plenty of people that that are not from here. Now, when I see most of these people that are doing at least labor-intensive tasks, guys in yard crews on yard trucks, people that are in the construction industry that have sheetrock mud all over their boots and working in other facets of the construction world. I see them at one place, and I see them at convenience stores, and I see all of the people that are making money off of these guys. We'll talk about them and much more. Your calls are welcome. It is Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. Blacklisted Radio right here at blacklistedradio.com, on RBN, and a myriad of other places. The Troll Room is available for you at blacklistedраdio.com in the back channel audio stream as well. So, yes, we at Democratic Socialism. I don't remember. The people of the convenience store. So I look at most of these convenience stores, and so much of them cater to illegal immigrants or people from South America that have family in South America that want to wire money to South America, Western Union, and a myriad of other systems like that. And each and every time I go into one of these convenience stores on my way home or to fill up, there's no doubt there are several of these guys hanging out, scratching off lottery tickets. I don't know how they get paid. I guess if it's a small enough amount, they can get cash, and some of them are probably legal U.S. citizens. But I just watch how many of these people, and it's anecdotal and probably racist to say that many illegal immigrants love the lottery system and love taking what little money that they are getting paid hourly, and they put it back into the system in one form or fashion. Now, they spend tons of money on these phone cards to call to South America. And if you've gone into any Texas convenience store, supermarket, you will find a kiosk that is especially designed to help people that don't speak English call back home, and then probably to wire them money. So there's all these industries that make the money. Very little of it ends up in the pockets of the American citizen, much less the illegal immigrant in this country. So when it comes to money, I think that's kind of a moot point, because so much of that is regained back before it leaves. I mean, how many times is your dollar before you actually get some kind of good and or service taxed along the way, even at the point where you're getting the final product? You've worked and worked and worked to earn a wage, and after you've paid all of that, all of the SUR fees just to exist in this country, then you get taxed here in Texas. Sales tax, luxury taxes in other country or other states have income taxes, on and on and on. Everybody gets a little chunk. Buy some gas in this country, especially in Texas, almost 50% of that is going right back to the state. Gamble, scratch off tickets, money goes right back to the state. So the system that we have today has a really effective way of extracting almost all the money that is being created via the Federal Reserve and commercial banks that lend into existence. And they are allowed to do so because we believe there is a never-ending economic upward curve. So that's where we will leave that and move into democratic socialism. If you're not familiar with Miss Cortez, she is what we're going to call AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or Ocasio-Cortez. She has been a Bernie supporter. She was an organizer for him, and she has the audaciousness to upset the long-time, 10-term congressperson that was in his seat, Connor Lamb. Let's see. No, not Connor Lamb. What's the guy's name? Anyway, she's upset the system, and there's a pretty good opinion piece from Brett Stevens at the New York Times. Democratic socialism is Dem doom. So this is probably going to be one of the most Wikied/Googled terms of 2018, because people are trying to wrap their mind around what it is to be a democratic socialist. She was actually endorsed by the Democratic Socialist Council. That doesn't usually give it a lot of... so whether she is or not, and her upbringing is not nearly as humble and poor as she may have led it on to be, and a brilliant marketing social strategy campaign was launched either organically by herself and friends and or the powers that be, the real the real left. I don't know, people. Anyway, so obviously a lot of Democrats, a lot of people on the left are realizing, I would say especially in the gay / LGBT community, that the Democrats are they are failing them, and that there is no other alternative for these people, because God knows you can't go Republican because they're all Nazis and they want to kill you, and all the other things that are probably completely inaccurate. But it does face them. I think people are facing the two-party system, the reality that there is only one party, and that is the capitalist, neoliberal, neoconservative system, the machine that we now have before us today, that we talk about a lot here on the show. We call it the New World Order, everybody. Yeah. So democratic socialism is getting a lot of attention. I don't really have an opinion on her. I mean, I've seen some of her commentary, people saying, so what is democratic socialism? What is it? And it kind of escapes her. She talks about a new deal. We have to reinvigorate the markets, create jobs, opportunities for people. And then, of course, just like almost everybody on the left, a lot of attention to social justice, trying to rid the world of inequality, especially the United States of America, and overthrowing the current system that we have today, which is capitalism. Some of you might call it free marketism, free markets. We could talk about whether it is or not, but these are just philosophies. It's like people get labeled a Marxist. I've been called Marxist, and it's, Marx was an economic philosopher, and don't really subscribe to. I'll be quite honest. I'm not intelligent enough, bored enough, or interested enough into reading up all of the writings from Marx to ever really formulate a positive and or super negative. I mean, obviously, I think that central control doesn't work necessarily, and that what democratic socialists want, which they believe will get them to a political utopia, where most people believe their system would be better, whether you're part of the Zeitgeist movement, wanting supercomputers to delegate and allocate resources, or maybe some other system. So democratic socialism, according to Wikipedia, is a political philosophy that advocates political democracy alongside social ownership of the means of production. So social ownership through government of the means of production. So the government, although we have social ownership, I guess we'd be putting in time, working, crops. That's just my jaded way of looking at it. But when you're talking about means of production, okay, we're working at Toyota. Toyota is owned socially, at least their factories here, by the government. You kind of have, sort of that in China, and it's eerily similar to economic fascism, where you have a central government that controls, even though there's social ownership, which is a nice term. So we should just look that up. What is social ownership? Well, social ownership is any of the various forms of ownership by the means of production in a socialist economic system, encompassing public ownership, employee ownership, cooperative ownership, citizen ownership. So you have that collectives and co-ops, HUDs, MUDs, municipal utility districts. You have other things that are commonly owned, at least in small government, that people all pay for in some form or fashion, usually with money. Now, not to say that we couldn't have a factory farm and everybody has to work so many hours on the farm, and then they're vested in some form or fashion. So that's what that means. So you'd have social ownership along with the means of production. There is an emphasis on self-management and or democratic management of economic institutions within a market, socialist, participatory or decentralized planned economy. Democratic socialists hold that capitalism is inherently incompatible with what they hold to be democratic values of liberty, equality, and solidarity, that these ideals can only be achieved through the realization of a socialist society. Democratic socialism can be supportive of either revolutionary or reformist politics as a means to establish socialism. So, across the country, across the landscape here in the USA, I would say that 80% of the colleges and professors and people working inside of colleges are somewhat socialist. Now, I don't know if they're democratic socialist or what that would actually end up looking like. I think that socialism gets a bad name because we look at Venezuela, we look at a lot of other failed states that were hailed as socialist utopias. Bernie Sanders, you can find plenty of videos of him talking about how great Venezuela is and how wonderful they are. And, you end up with kind of a monarchy rule. That's what you ended up in Venezuela with, where people perceived that they had power over the government, that they had a social construct, that they had ownership in the system. And then you have people like Hugo Chavez's daughter that ran away with billions of dollars and invested in U.S. real estate and basically, looted the treasury and changed the Venezuelan flag on the way out. Now, I don't blame socialism or even democratic socialism for that, but it shows you that even with the best of intentions, you can end up with somebody that is above the power, truly a king, much more powerful than Donald Trump, much more powerful than Nancy Pelosi or anybody that you could, Hillary Clinton, for instance, much more powerful because they really are a king. Now, there could be other models for socialism. Now, the question is, revolutionarily, I'm just not that worried that people on the left, especially social democrat types, would want a violent revolution. Most of them are horrified of violence, although you wouldn't think that if you go to any marches lately. If you're out there expressing free speech or even wearing a MAGA hat. We had an instance in San Antonio that made national headlines that showed this kid just wearing a hat getting attacked by a young Hispanic man at a Whataburger fast food restaurant. And I'm sure it happened under Obama. I'm sure people were upset under Obama, but never before have I seen so many people that are charged, that have hatred in their hearts, primarily because they watch television. Quite literally. You can get a lot of other fancy analysis, but if you watch television, you're probably enraged. So there's plenty of things that we can point to as shortcomings of the current system, the capitalist system, what we have today. Amazon, Walmart, the United States of America, Boeing, Raytheon. I could give you a lot of companies and a lot of other examples of just power beyond the beltway. Companies that shift and they're way more powerful than Donald Trump could ever be. And that's one of the great things that I appreciate about the system that we have today. Now, you start getting into democratic socialism is further distinguished from social democracy on the basis that democratic socialists are committed to systemic transformation of the economy from capitalism to socialism, whereas social democracy is supportive of reforms to capitalism. That's the liberal versus neoliberal line there. One of the other things is that, the decisions through the government would be made by people, not by politicians and or company executives. Now, that I think is inherently a bad idea because most people will not vote. We have so much power in our hands and have no realization that will not go out of their way to support local businesses, community-funded banks now. Most people want Walmart, they want McDonald's, they want it now, they want it supersized. And those individuals are the same type of people that you would have making very important decisions almost in a direct representative way. I think there's plenty of examples that it would work great, when it comes to the legalization or the federal criminalization of cannabis, things that, and all drugs for that matter, that would create huge economic opportunities, and it would literally decimate gang violence and the issues that we have on the border tenfold. Those kind of things would be great in a democratically or a direct democratic system. Now, I believe, Doug Owen believes, and probably most of you, that the system that we have today is flawed and that it is easily gamed. But I would also say that any kind of democratic socialist system that you have in the future, and I don't believe that we'll have one, but I believe that people, just like in Venezuela, may be convinced that they have power and that they are in a democratic socialist system. I don't believe that it will exist, and I believe that the state, especially centralized power, will do everything it can to hold on to it no matter what, no matter how many people, well-intentioned, want it to not. They want a political answer to a cultural and socio-economic problem. And that problem is that the people that do hold the power do nothing with it. And that somehow letting people that have no experience and no understanding of the financing and running of corporations, no matter how intricate, underwater drilling to Dave's lawn service company, how people that are not experts or somehow involved would make better decisions. Jeff Bezos, for all that he is a really smart guy. That's why Amazon is worth the billions upon billions of dollars. He himself worth billions. It's not because he's really lucky or was born into the right family. He's a freaking genius, and that's why he's there. So we'll talk more about it, wrap up the show. Coming up next, don't go anywhere. It's Blacklisted Radio. Is this the demise of the Democrats? Is this where people want to get really radical? Now, universal income, everybody, having some kind of, benefit that is beyond what they get today. I mean, we have a pretty robust welfare system in this country, Social Security, safety net, and these are the same people that want to occupy ICE. They want to get rid of borders, which is more of an anarchist thing. We're eliminating borders, complete free markets, free market anarchy. So it's odd to me because you see so many people on the left that are now justifying the one thing that would destroy the welfare state. We're seeing that in Europe, and that's why the far right have become so popular, because they're saying, look, we can't afford this. We do have a robust welfare system and a social safety net for our people, but when you bring in 100,000 people every year, into a small country or maybe more, but you overwhelm the system, it fails. So, that kind of failure, that kind of lack of foresight that you see many of the people that, claim to be democratic socialists. I don't think that most people understand what it is when they say it. When I think that when I was a very adamant and active anarcho-capitalist, I didn't understand what it meant. Once you start to really understand it and the practical implementation that is required to move forward with a new system like this, and then all of the shortcomings, all of the safety valves that you have to make sure that you don't end up with a Venezuela. Now, people like this, Cortez lady, who are they're frustrated. I understand. That's why I am sympathetic to the left. I would consider myself a classic liberal. If you want to, put me in a box, I would consider myself to be supportive of a social safety net for people, and don't mind paying small sums of my money to have that for all that need it. I don't mind charity to the poor. I don't mind charity to people that have been devastated seeking asylum from other countries in this country. But that's not what any of these people want. They don't know what they want. They want a lot of things. And ultimately, they would like for you to pay for their experiment to get to this place that they believe would be somehow more just. When you have people making decisions based on feelings and feel good and whatever, they're outraged and feel that they need to do something because they saw it on the television. Because that's what you have. You have people that are outraged because they saw it on the television. So those kind of people, they're ineffectual in that, effectual in votes and to sway popular decision. That's why I believe that we have to have some kind of Magna Carta post. Well, we just celebrated having it. The Continental Congress's approval of the Declaration of Independence, which is much more powerful than what you may end up with. Hence, Venezuela. Remember, they thought they were socialists. They thought that they were vested in the system, and the system was ripped out from underneath them. Don't want that to happen here, all you socialists. But good on you for caring about the environment and at least bringing attention to it and other things that I think are very, very outside of the realm of anarchy. All right, guys, that is my time. I hope you had a good, enjoyable hour here on this Sunday evening. I'll be back next week, same time, same bat channel for another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. Until then, Ken, thank you, producer of this show. He'll be on for another hour if you want to talk to him, hosting the next show, and we'll see him next week. Thank you, Ken. Thank you all for listening to the program. Take care.